Hello everyone, welcome back again. Lately, we've been having some fun doing these videos where we take 5 different guitars from a particular model and we shoot them out and see what's different about each of them and kind of give you some thoughts on the different models. Let's rip into it. So we recently did a video checking out 5 different levels of Stratocaster and then 5 different levels of Telecaster, and our kind of idea was to find some models that don't get talked about as much because they aren't currently in production and the only way you can find them is on the used market. I know for a lot of us, we shop for used guitars just as much, if not more than new guitars. And a lot of these like shootout style videos only really look at like new guitars, what's available right now. And I don't think that's the whole picture. We grabbed some stuff from our inventory that I think 4 of these are either not in production or they're not the same as the current production model. Let's check them out. First one we're gonna look at here is going to be the most accessible price point wise and is the newest guitar on this list, which is the Gibson Les Paul Lite. These are much thinner than a standard Les Paul. They have a very thin satin nitro finish, which is going to wear really well over time. They come in some cool colors, and these are very straight ahead Les Pauls with some not very traditional specs. As I said, the body is really thin on these. There's also no binding or anything like that. So this is a more modern style guitar. So the neck profile is not exactly like a 60s or 50s. I'd say it's closer to a 60s as it's pretty slim. Feels right at home so far. New, these are coming in at $14.99. So on the used market, these will kind of go anywhere from like $1,100 to $1,400. There's really nothing on these to add any unnecessary expense. These are about as straight ahead as you can get. And for a lot of people, I know this kind of doesn't check the box for everything you'd be looking for in a Les Paul, but this does feature the Gibson 498T and 490R pickups, which you'll see a few times throughout this list. Yeah, it's a Les Paul, a very stripped back Les Paul, but it's still Les Paul. Moving away from the satin finish and thinner body, we have the Les Paul Studio. I will note Gibson recently refreshed the Studio model and made a bunch of changes. This particular example is from 2004. Definitely shows its age. You can see there was a sticker here at some point. It's got some wear on the sides, but it's a Les Paul Studio. This particular example has an ebony fretboard, which is pretty rad, as well as the same 498T and 490R pickups that you saw in the Gibson Les Paul Lite. This starts getting a little bit closer to your Les Paul standard. There is still no binding either on the body or on the neck. You're still getting just the regular like print logo, no mother of pearl inlay or anything like that. You're getting closer to, the standard Les Paul. The neck is a little bit thicker on this one than the last one we looked at, but I would still say this one's probably like in like 60s range. Price point wise, these will come in a little bit more than the Les Paul Lite. I usually see studios like this go anywhere from like $1,200 to $1,600, with around 13 or 14 being the sweet spot. Moving up from the Studio, we get into the traditional. This is kind of the entry point to the Les Paul that has all of the accoutrements. This has the binding on both the neck and the body. This has the mother of pearl inlay. And this has some great pickups in this. This has the 57 Classics. This particular example has a figured top, as you can see here. Not all of the traditionals have that. This particular example does have a nicer top compared to most traditionals. So this was both a bit more when it was new and goes for a bit more on the used market. Something like this, you'll see at around $2,000, though if you find one with a more plain top, I've seen them as low as like $1,600, $1,700. So a nice bit lower than a standard still, but you get most of the other appointments of a standard. So the price range is pretty wide on these, which we'll probably get more into this later, but Les Pauls are like all over the place. You can have a traditional with a crazy top go for more than like a standard with a plain top. Not like a rule of thumb by any means, but like just there's a lot of overlap, a lot of gray area. It does make doing a video like this a little bit hard. So here we have the regular Gibson Les Paul Standard. This particular example is from 1999 and actually features those 498T, 490R pickups that we discussed earlier. This particular example does not have a flame top or anything. It is a plain top. This is an ebony one. Pretty classy, pretty cool. This is your standard Les Paul. This has obviously all of the accoutrements as this is the standard. This particular example has some pretty cool aging on the binding, which is pretty rad. I like that personally. You can even see quite a bit of aging on the headstock right around the logo. This particular example is a little bit heavier than the traditional we just looked at, but otherwise, there's definitely a lot of similarities. This one in particular has like a 60s slimmer neck. I know for a lot of people, this is kind of the dream guitar. This is the one that Les Paul Standard is kind of the basis of comparison for everything else. I know for us at the shop, whenever we get a Les Paul in, we're always kind of comparing it to something like this. This is your baseline. This is the one. There's a reason this is called the standard. Price-wise, standards can definitely be all over the place depending on the year, color, all kinds of stuff like that. This example from 1999 with a plain top that's not a rare finish, you'd see this anywhere from like $2,200 to $2,600, so a bit more than the traditional, right there in the sweet spot. And I would say you'll usually see these for just under what you'll see like a brand new Les Paul Standard go for. If you want to go a notch up from the Les Paul Standard without going up to like a Les Paul Custom or Custom Shop Les Paul, you have the Gibson Les Paul Standard Premium Plus. This one in particular has a beautiful Honeyburst AAA top, which is awesome. I personally really like this. And this features Burstbucker Pro pickups. This one in particular is quite a bit lighter than the last Les Paul we looked at, because it's chambered. Price-wise, these do come in a little bit more than your Les Paul Standard. I've seen them anywhere from $2,500 to even up to $3,500 for particular tops, but around $28 is kind of the sweet spot I've seen for a good condition used Les Paul Standard Premium Plus with a cool top like this. I'll put a general note that almost every year of the Les Paul features like a little bit different specs, different finish options. Different years will go for different prices, and just different examples will go for different prices. Feature-wise, price point-wise, all that changes a lot with Les Pauls. There's a ton of variation year to year, model to model, even example to example. It is not uncommon to hear somebody say that they, tried 5 or 6 different versions of the exact same model to find the one that was like the one for them. Everyone definitely has its own personality. I will note all of these guitars that we just looked at are all in our inventory. So if you want to check out our site, you can check it out at aflashloadofgear.com, or click the QR code here, or even go to affog.com if you don't feel like typing all that in, and you'll get there that way too. All right, let's see what all these sound like. You are hearing all of these Les Pauls through this EVH 5153 with EO34 tubes, and it's going through a orange 412 cabinet. We have that mic'd up with a Shure SM57 and Sennheiser E609, and we're also blending in just a little bit from these Rode NT5 room mics to give it some space. starting with the Les Paul Lite here, this was the first one we checked out, and I was really, really impressed with this guitar. Every time that I have played one of these, I've really, really liked it. I will say the retail price at $14.99 is a bit much for these. I think these are really awesome. If Gibson could offer something like this for like $1,000 or even better, like $7.99, $8.99, I just think these would be absolutely unbeatable as a great first like professional level guitar, something that's ready to get gigged, something that's ready to be recorded with. But I still think this is really, really great. I love the neck profile on this. It's really comfortable and also feels really at home for me because this feels a lot like these older Les Paul double cuts they did that also had the thinner bodies. This particular example is from the early 2000s. Recently, they did like a Rick Beato signature and it was a recreation of a guitar, just like one of these. Now, you'll see most of these go for north of $2,000, which is absolutely crazy to think about given what these were retail-wise back in the early 2000s. These have become really collectible and really desirable for a reason, and I think this is a really, really good step in the right direction from Gibson to kind of see them making something like this at a more accessible price point. Obviously, these are not the same, but neck profile-wise, finish-wise, that sort of thing, these are definitely pretty similar. Obviously, P90 pickups is going to be very different, but yeah, feel-wise, these actually aren't that different. I know the pickups in this guitar are a bit controversial. Some people love the 498Ts and 490Rs, but some people don't enjoy them as much. I think that it actually complements this guitar quite well, and it's a very responsive guitar. Everything that I put into it, I kind of get back out, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really good value, maybe the best value on this list actually, depending what you can get one for. I think if you find one of these for around $1,200, I think it's pretty hard to beat within that price range. Yeah, I like this. It's not trying to be anything it isn't. Like, this is not trying to be Les Paul standard. It's kind of a new version of a Les Paul special, and I think it does that very, very well. This would be a great first guitar to start gigging with and start going in the studio with and all that sort of stuff. It's not for everyone, but if you like this thin nitro finish and you don't mind that it's gonna wear over time and it's gonna look like that guitar does with wear all through the edges and stuff, then I think you might be really happy with one of these. So stepping into the Les Paul Studio. I know I've touched on this in other videos, how I like the Les Paul Studio, but it's just definitely not my favorite offering from Gibson. I do like this, but I will say, even though these last two had the same pickups, to me, I don't know, I felt like they fit the last guitar better. This still sounded good and the sound between the two was actually pretty comparable. But I will say when I was playing both of them, I just felt like I was getting more back from the Lite than I was from this, even though sound-wise they weren't that different. So that's worth noting. I kind of do wish this was the standard. It's like so almost there, but it's not all the way there. I think a lot of people would consider this a lot more Les Paul for a similar price to the Lite. But for me and for my personal taste, I'd probably go for the Lite. If you like this aesthetically and you like how it sounds, this is a totally valid option. Great neck profile on this, and the ebony board is a nice touch as well. I think price point wise, this is a pretty good value as well. But if you like the standard and you're only considering a studio because you want to save some money, I think this still does leave a little bit to be desired if you're after a standard. If you're someone who's looking for a Les Paul in this price range and you don't like the specs of the Les Paul Lite, which is totally valid, but you don't want to spend all the money to get into a standard and you don't really care as much about the binding and that sort of thing, I think this could be a good fit. Stepping into the Les Paul Traditional, this is kind of where we start getting into like what I would consider the standard Les Pauls with the standard accoutrements. This feels like a very welcome upgrade over the Les Paul Studio. I do think this one sounded a lot better. I really like how the 57 Classic pickups sound in this. Definitely not as hot or compressed as the 498T, 490R set, but very wide open. This guitar is not super heavy, it's not super light either, but it just feels solid. Very cool top. I do like the kind of wine red with a little bit of figuring. This is a solid Les Paul overall. At this price point, you're really close to a standard, and it's tough to say there's much that's better about the standard than this, but I don't know, I did prefer the feel of the standard to this one. So while this is a totally valid option, and I would definitely try to push into something like this if you're looking at a studio, but maybe not sold on the specs of a studio, I think this is a better place to go. But again, if you're looking for a standard, I don't know, there's just something to the standard that I might push up to. I still like this though, and the 57 Classic pickups in this are a really cool spec. If you love everything that this is, you like the pickups that are in this, and you're looking for something that's gonna be $2,000 or less, this is probably the best Les Paul you're gonna get at that price point. And I will say, going from here to the other standards, the law of diminishing return really comes into play here. This is really, really solid. I can't tell you the others are any better quality. I might have my preferences towards another guitar here, but this is a serious Les Paul, and this one is definitely in the room as far as like the Les Paul standard type of guitar goes. Now we have the 99 standard, kind of the basis of comparison for all of these. It's tough. This is probably my favorite of all of them. I know when we plugged this in, me and Thomas are immediately like, oh wow, like, yep, that's the sound. That's the Les Paul. And believe it or not, this has the same pickups or same model pickups as the Studio and the Lite. This one's older, so I don't know how much variation there is year to year with the pickups, but this is the 498T 490R set. Yeah, as soon as I plugged this in and played the first note, it felt right at home. And when I think of the Les Paul sound, for me, it's this and the Les Paul feel, and it's everything that this just felt like what I would want out of a Gibson Les Paul. You may love the all black plain top aesthetics. You may want a more flamey Les Paul. That's all down to personal preference, but I will say, if you just want a great Les Paul, you don't care as much about flame top and stuff, I think that getting a plain top Les Paul standard is one of the absolute best values on the market. And some of these older ones from the late 90s, early 2000s are really, really special. So I would definitely keep your eyes out for something like this. If you're looking for a Les Paul for the studio, you're looking for a Les Paul to gig and tour with, I mean, you cannot go wrong with a Les Paul standard. I know that's a sentiment that's been echoed over and over again and will continue to be echoed for years to come, but there's a reason. This is a proper guitar. I know for a lot of people, saving up for a Les Paul standard is, you know, a really big thing, and I think that it is well worth that, and it's worth the journey to get there. As long as you take care of it, this can definitely last a lifetime. Here we have our final guitar, the Gibson Les Paul Standard Premium Plus. This one is really, really close for me to the regular standard. I think I lightly prefer the standard, but there's actually some things that some of you guys might like better on this than a regular standard. Obviously, the most glaring is the AAA flame top. That's pretty undeniable. The honeyburst finish looks really, really great. The Burstbucker Pro pickups also sound fantastic. Definitely less compressed than the standard we just looked at. These may be a little bit like lower output, but there was just a lot of clarity. Yeah, this was just a really, really great sounding Les Paul, and because it's chambered, this guitar is a lot lighter, so you may like that as well. So if weight is a big deal for you and having a flame top and you like those Burstbucker pickups, I would say this is probably worth the premium that this demands. If you don't care about that though, and especially if you're somebody that you're gonna be swapping pickups in and out and you don't care about the flame top and that sort of thing, getting just a really great plain top Les Paul standard might be the way to go, as it will be considerably less. I would say once again, this is definitely a lifetime type of Les Paul. Just between this one and the Ebony we just looked at, that kind of all comes down to your personal preference. They're both great. I hope you guys have enjoyed going through all of these Les Pauls with us. I know I had a lot of fun doing this. If I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be the Ebony Standard. There was just something with that one that I just really, really liked. Everything felt right at home and it sounded great. So that's my pick, but I would say pretty much every Les Paul on this list definitely has its place, and depending what you're looking for, I think every one of these could be a valid option for someone. The world of Les Pauls is quite vast, and every example is just a little bit different, so I always encourage people to get their hands on as many Les Pauls as you can. I think the best way to learn about these is just to play them. The more you play, the better. I know for me, my #1 Les Paul is a Les Paul Special from 1995, and I actually bought and sold like 6 of the same model to get to the one that I really, really like. I wish everyone the best on that journey and hope you find the Les Paul that's perfect for you. Let me know down below in the comments which one of these was your favorite. Also, if you have any suggestions for any other like 5 levels of videos that you want us to do, let us know and we can make more videos like this. I know there's tons more guitar and bass models we could be looking at. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and all that good stuff. And we will see you in another video soon. Bye.